everyone, welcome to this week's Karma Cards. You guessed it, there's a lot of energy, right? You're probably feeling it. We've got a lot of solar energy coming in. The Schumann's spiking, the magnetic field is high today. It's at a 5 on the KP index, which is when we generally start to really feel the magnetic field around us. It can create those ascension symptoms that we often talk about. So it's been an interesting corridor of energy. Plus last week we had all those planetary shifts, and we don't always feel it when they shift, but now we're in it, and now we can feel the energy of the Venus retrograde happening. And of course tomorrow, which is July 26th, pretty sure it's July 26th tomorrow, that's a Thursday, Mercury's going to move into the sign of Virgo. And then next month we've got a really big Mercury retrograde happening, and it's going to be an interesting one, and we'll go into that. But for now, Mercury is moving into one of the signs it rules, Virgo. And that means that our minds are going to have a nice sharpness to this because having Virgo in one of its ruling signs means it's in its strength right now. And specifically with Virgo, we're looking at an analytical mind that's really good at planning. It's really good at compartmentalizing. It's really good at organizing. So we want to be able to use this to our advantage. And the way you know how to use that energy to your advantage is to check out your own natal chart. It's helpful to look at both where Mercury sits in your chart and Virgo sits in your chart, because this will highlight the areas that are getting a lot of attention mentally from you. So for example, you might have it in your 4th house, which is the house of your home. And if that's the case, then the attention is literally going to be focused on the organizing, the cleaning up, the getting clear about your home space. Like removing clutter would be a very big deal. If it's in your 12th house, that would represent your subconscious mind, and that's where the organizing and the clearing are going to be happening. But even if you don't know where these placements are in your chart, it really doesn't matter. The urge to get clearer, to get organized, to get a plan is going to kick in. And by you acting on those urges, you are going to trigger that sensation of whatever it is that needs your attention or needs organizing from you is going to naturally come into the forefront. That's just how it works. So as we kind of put our attention on something, whether it's a junk drawer, whether it's a closet, whether it's notes that you need to organize your computer, it doesn't matter. The act of trying to organize and categorize is going to trigger that awareness of what in your life needs that kind of attention, and that's going to start tomorrow. Also coming up on Tuesday, August 1st, is the full moon in Aquarius, and this is again going to have a big energy. So if you want to be a part of that, if you want to hear what's happening on the cosmic level, get a breakdown of the energy and what the messages are for us, you can join me at the full moon spirit circle that's going to be happening on Tuesday, August 1st at 6 p.m. Pacific time. The link is in the description below. Here's the link on the screen so you can see what to look for. And I'd love to have you there. We're going to go through the full moon release process that's very specific to this lunation. And we're going to do psychic Q&A, which is always fun, where you get to ask me your questions and I can ask my team what information is coming through for you. So if that sounds exciting, click the link below and I hope to see you there. So the message that's coming through from my team at this time is really interesting. Number one, I pulled a card again, just like last week, and I got the same card in the same position. Right, there's 78 cards in this deck. It is not easy to pull the exact same card in the exact same position, but here it is. So they want to start out by letting you know you are surrounded by blessings and protection at this time. There's good things happening for you. However, it might feel like you're being tested. Some of us are feeling that. I feel that very much. We're being tested. We're going through another test period. Now, sometimes we go through these on a group level, and I think that may be where we are at right now, and other times we go through them on an individual level. But the test is interesting, and I've been really trying to figure out, okay, if this is a test, which I accept, then what is the test about? And on a personal level, I get, well, there's a couple of things that can come up, but on the bigger level, it's about understanding that fear itself is the test. So fear itself is the test. Whether or not you are going to fall into the frequency of fear or not. Now, what's really interesting is that in the Law of One, they talk about all experiences come through the South Pole. And what they meant by that is that we all have a North and South Pole, and it's related to our chakra system. So your crown chakra would be considered your North Pole, and your root chakra would be considered their South Pole. And all experiences come in through the South Pole. That's also where all vital energy comes in. So we're constantly receiving energy from the earth. We're receiving that electromagnetic field. It comes through your root chakra, and it gets processed through your system and then on its way up. Now, the more that you are doing the spiritual growth work, the personal growth work, you are opening the channels of your chakras naturally. Whether you understand that or not doesn't even matter. You don't have to know anything about chakras to know that the more that you are working with principles, like if you were working with the principle of power, for example, understanding your personal power, you would be opening up your sacral chakra, your second chakra, and you would be balancing that. And that's also has to do with the feelings of pleasure and the feelings of guilt. And the feelings of self-expression. If you were focusing in on these areas and doing work there, you are opening up that chakra. It naturally opens for you. So the lower three chakras, your root, which is the red chakra, the sacral, which is orange, and the yellow, which is the solar plexus, these are considered the physical plane chakras, and these are actually all the way open on most people. When you get to the heart chakra, which is the transitional plane chakra, it's a little bit physical and it's a little bit metaphysical, if you will. When you get to this chakra, it doesn't necessarily open on people unless you are working with the concepts of that chakra. And those concepts would be about love, forgiveness, understanding, compassion, right? These concepts, working on those opens this center. And of course, in order to reach the higher centers, we have to open each one as we go up. The reason I bring all this up is because, again, they talked about all experience comes through the South Pole or your root chakra. So every experience that we're having, initially our response to it is a survival response because the root chakra deals with our feelings of basic survival. And that is where fear lives, right? Because if we feel insecure, we go into fear, right? If we feel threatened, if our ability to survive feels threatened, we go into fear. And I thought this was so interesting because at this time, the lessons are whether or not you're going to believe that fear. And so what's interesting is, like, when we have an argument with someone, for example, let's say that's the experience and it gets processed, you notice your initial response to it. Now, if you've done a lot of work and you're opening yourself up and you're letting things travel up through your energy systems, you might not stay there very long. It would be a very quick reaction of like, oh God, I'm going to lose you, right? Let's say just for a second. For those who haven't opened up higher energy centers and learned the nuance of situation, then what we do is we stay in that place of, oh my God, I'm going to lose you. And now some of us have different issues that get triggered by that. So if I'm talking about relationships for you and people being mad at you, maybe that's a trigger. Maybe that does actually activate that scarcity or survival response in you naturally, because that's where the healing needs to happen. And that's what that's what you can learn at this time is, I have a belief there that if this gets taken away, then my survival is threatened, right? And then you know where some work is. But at this time, the testing is whether or not you let that fear block you from moving the energy higher up your body, the energy of the experience, right? So let's say you get bad news from someone about, I don't even know what it would be about. Bad news about your house, something broke in your home. This is a good one because a lot of people home will go right to your red chakra because it's about security. So if that were the case, what you'd want to notice is how long does it stay there? How long do I stay in a sense of fight or flight or panic or insecurity around this? And then if you are able to see nuance of situation, like that's, let's say it's a pipe that bursts. That's bad, but it's not as bad as my house catching on fire. So that would represent the mind's ability to detect nuance, and that means that energy of the information has now moved out of the lower chakra, the root, and up into a higher chakra where reasoning can come into play, where you're actually, considering the situation and its severity, possibly the benefits, possibly what is the lesson connected to. If you're asking that, why is this showing up? What's the message for me? You're moving way a lot higher in your energy system if that's the consideration you are giving that experience. So right now, what they want us to know is the testing is around fear. It's letting you know, how long are you staying in this lower level energy in the body, right? Where it's going to start anyway. How long do you stay there? Maybe it moves quite quickly in you. Maybe different information moves at different levels, but part of the understanding is just recognizing that our first response is a survival response, and that's just how the energy flows. And if we can see that, then we don't have to necessarily get wrapped up into that feeling, because many times the energy can get stuck there. We can get new information, especially if it's negative, and it goes right through that center and it can get stuck. So the message is to understand that you are divinely protected, you are blessed right now, and there's a victory actually on the way. And that's the second time we've got that message in a 2-week period. So good things are happening. The fear that you are feeling might not actually be a threat in your environment. It's just simply that any experience is going into your body through your root chakra, which is your security center first. Security and survival first. And if you find that you're getting stuck there, then it's time to open it up and see if you can find nuance in the situation. And if you're brave enough, ask yourself, what's the message this situation is trying to teach me? And then you're pulling the experience all the way up through your chakras, and you'll be delighted and surprised how not only does your perception shift, but because you've shifted perception, the experience itself seems to shift as well. And with that, let's go into this week's karma cards. If you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. Got 3 sets of cards. I've got 3 decks of cards, planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team what is the message for this week. And I've got 2 sets of answers, a set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and you feel, what do I need this week? Am I looking for action-related guidance or outcome-related guidance? And of course, you can always choose both. While you're choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for July 26th, which is Wednesday. So the Mercury retrograde, nope. So Mercury enters Virgo on the 27th. Just a note to former Therese. This reading is for July 26th through August 2nd. And the flavor of this reading, we've got the Sun, one of the happier cards. I love getting the Sun in the sign of Gemini. So this is about communicating and expressing ourselves in the 7th house, which is about partnerships, all kinds of partnerships. If you're choosing action, your spiritual action at this time is to demonstrate what you want to be known diplomatically. So what I'm getting from this one is, okay, we're in a test, right? Let's say this is a group test right now, which I'm getting the sense that, yes, it is. So I'm in a test. I'm recognizing that all experience is coming through my root chakra first. It's activating my fear, and that's giving me information that I want to share. To do so diplomatically would be to remember that if we're all going through the test, then we're all being tested about fear. So it's important that when we come to a discovery, and we need to share it with someone, especially a partner or a close relationship of some sort, that we need to be mindful that they're also going through their fear testing at this time, and information's also coming through their root. And so it's how we say it. So maybe it's information about something they said to you, or the way that they talked to you, or the way they reacted to something. We want to be clear that anything that could be spoken or communicated right now might not hit the way you mean it. So you need to do the sandwich technique is a very good technique. So it's a positive, and if you have something negative or, hard to say, you sandwich it between two positives. So positive, negative, positive. And then that way you are sort of cushioning the blow a little bit. And again, the positives need to be authentic. It needs to be something you truly do want to point out that's helpful. And in that way, it helps the other person hear it. And it's mindful that, my fear is getting activated, but I'm assuming so is yours. And I'm being mindful about how I am sharing with you what's coming up for me. Mental action at this time, realize what is believed about relationships. We're still inside the Venus retrograde, which is a reclaiming, a cleanup of our relationship. So right now it's asking us to pay attention to our belief system around relationships. What do you believe the relationship is supposed to give you? What do you believe you're putting in it? What do you believe they're putting in it? Are you idealizing relationship? Are you comparing it to something else? These are the things that we're meant to organize when it comes to relationships right now, is what do I expect from this? Because many times we're holding expectation unconsciously. We have an expectation for another person that we're not necessarily conscious of. For example, let's say that you're practicing stating your boundaries, right? You're getting better at stating your boundaries, and your unconscious belief is that if you practice stating those boundaries, then that person's going to respect those boundaries. They're going to hear it and respect it, because that would be, the most beneficial outcome of what could happen. But if they're not reciprocating that, then you can turn that into a story of like, this person is a jerk. They don't care. Like, my feelings don't matter to them, or my boundaries are getting trampled over and they don't care. And we're not in that space of that we had an expectation, right? The goal was actually for you to set the boundary. To have them respect that would be the bonus, but the goal was the work you did. How they respond is on them. What you do is on you. And this can be very difficult because we tend to do the work so we get a response, right? We can get transactional, and that's so understandable. It's hard not to do it sometimes. It's hard not to be like, well, I stated the boundary, I did the work, now you need to respect it. What we want to do then is go back to what the last step said and recognize we need to communicate with this person that that I set the boundary and you violated the boundary. And we need to figure out how to do it diplomatically so that they can hear you and respond. It's a tricky area. And yet, if you engage in this work, what you're going to find is that things become smoother as you become aware of what you unconsciously expect from the other person that you are engaging with. Physical action at this time. Act like a leader. Use the quickest way and get a fair deal. So acting like a leader is an interesting point because it depends on how you interpret the word leader. But the way I am asked to interpret this word is, one, you are the example, and two, the leader takes all in as a part of themselves. If they're in their sovereign power, if the leader's in a sovereign power, they take all in as part of themselves. So they're always considering what's best for both, not just what's best for them. So it's not an aggressive steamrolling situation, but rather recognizing that I have the strength and the awareness to perceive my own needs, and I'm also intuiting your needs, or I'm going to ask you and I'm going to try to take that in as a part of me, recognizing that if I can get this win-win where my needs and your needs get met, then we're in the best situation. So that's how we do it. So again, the leader is the one willing to have the hard conversation, right? The leader's willing to say, all right, I'm working on creating better boundaries, and I established that with you, but then my expectation was that you would notice the boundary and correctly respond to it, and I feel that didn't happen. So what is it you need from me to help you recognize that that was a boundary I set? What could I do better to help you recognize that was my boundary? And is there anything that you need to let me know that would make this easier for both of us, right? It's that willingness to have a difficult conversation, but also take responsibility for the part you don't know that you might need to take responsibility for. It's a willingness to hear feedback and a desire to implement it in such a way that you win and the other person wins as well. It's a very mature state to be in. And again, because you're listening to this message, in any relationship you might be thinking about, guess who's the leader? You're the leader, which is an awesome position, very full of responsibility. And it takes that awareness, the willingness to look at the self as well as the other and try to find the win-win. Let's look at the physical outcomes for the Sun in Gemini in the 7th house of relationships and partnerships. The spiritual outcome at this time is the creation of information to explain balance. And I feel like that goes hand in hand with what we just talked about by being the leader. So you're going to actually create the conversation, right? The information. And by doing so, you will find the balance. So the beautiful thing here is that if we are willing and courageous enough to step into that leadership position where, one, we have self-awareness, but two, we're doing our best, right? We're doing our best. It's not about perfect, and there's no right way to do it, but we're doing our best to have awareness of another's needs in this scenario. And by doing so, we're going to be able to create the conversation that actually helps us strike the balance. And that's such a beautiful outcome to get. Mental outcome at this time, the gaining of respect for or from communications about cooperation. So again, the more we are willing to talk about how can we cooperate, the better it gets. It's like the better it gets, the better it gets. The hardest part that we're being asked right now is that willingness to not only have awareness of like our own personal reaction to stimulus right now, remember the test of fear, but to remember that every other person we're encountering, we're going to assume is also in this test. And my team is like, ba-ting, yes, we're in it together. We're having a group test experience right now about fear. So if we can hold that in our consciousness and approach situations, especially where we need to correct or something needs to find a balance, if we're coming in it with this team type of energy where it's like we're on the same team because we're having the same experience and we want the same outcome, and therefore the conversations that we're going to have are going to be more productive and more fruitful. And by doing so, it's like you can feel like the gold coin dropping, right? The cha-ching, like, I got it. And this is so amazing. And it's something that it deepens your awareness and understanding about dealing with people. It might not always result in the same outcome, but it will this time. And it will teach you about the value of having those deeper conversations moving forward. And some of you are naturals at this already, but it's just going to strengthen you even more. It's just going to help you drop deeper into your personal sovereignty even more. Physical outcome at this time. Things brought to life or light resulting from the fluctuations of your partners. So this one's a tricky one, because many times, especially in partnerships and things like relationships or marriages, I think that there's some people, not everybody, but some people can hold this kind of unconscious belief that we're going to be on the same page because we've been on the same page. And the ideal is to definitely be on the same page. But again, if you're investing time and energy into self-awareness and self-understanding, and then trying to understand or work on the compassion part for others, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's happening for both people. When one person is focused here, the other person in a very close relationship is focused on another aspect of the relationship, like maybe security or stability, things like that. So it's like one is doing the deeper emotional work and the other's doing some very serious physical work, and we're not always on the same page, but the idea is that we do want to cooperate and that we have the good of the relationship in mind. It's just we're not on the same page. And so what we want to do is, again, do our work and do our best to let go of the expectation that this work produces X result, right? If we can let go of the X result I expect, this work actually happens much faster. It's tricky. It's so tricky too, and especially if you have a thing about fairness. If you have things about fairness, it can be really hard, because it's like, oh, I'm doing the work, I'm paying attention, I'm communicating, I'm doing my best to be a compassionate person, and I feel that this other person is crapping all over me. They're taking advantage of me. They're not listening. They're dismissing what I say. They're mocking me even sometimes. I mean, that can be hard, and it does happen. And my team says it doesn't matter. And that's the part where even I want to bite my fist, because I understand that feeling. You're working so hard and all you want is that acknowledgement, but the team is saying that it's not about how they react, it's about you doing your work, because you doing your work is what you came here to do, your soul growth. We will work in pairs sometimes, and we will work in groups sometimes, family dynamics, relationships, social groups, things like that. But what everybody else does is actually not a part of your soul growth journey. That's theirs. And so we need to recognize that I might not always get the result I want from another, but that doesn't mean I didn't do the work, and it doesn't invalidate the work you did either. It simply means that you were attaching the validation to a result. The validation is that you did the work, and you did it. You got it. You can feel it in here. It resonates inside of you with a great sense of truth and grounding. And that's what you're looking for. There's your validation. What the other person does, whether they get it or not, is something that we've got to practice breathing through and reminding ourselves that it might not look fair right here, but the fairness does exist. And the fairness is that you're growing. That's the fairness, is that you did the work. Therefore, on the higher spiritual game board, your piece is moving and it's going places. And that's the true result of your work. We all desire to see it here, especially in relationships. We desire to do the work and then see the exchange and the result. And it's difficult when we don't. But if we can practice remembering that everybody's on a different part of the game board, not everybody is where you're at, not everybody has seen what you've seen or understood what you've understood yet. They'll get there. And you might be the perfect example to show them how. You doing your work and working on the self-validation part might just be the trigger that gets them to grow. You never know. But the point is that the internal validation is the goal. The external response to you is simply showing you, whatever it is, it's letting you know where you've grown or where growth needs to happen. So if you're still holding on to, that's not fair, that's okay. But that's where the growth needs to happen. And if you're like, wow, that person really doesn't understand boundaries. Okay, let's see how I can have this conversation another way where it's more productive, where I feel like they're recognizing where I'm at and I'm understanding where they're at. And in that way, you would know that you've done the work and you got the coins, you got the cookie, you got it on the inside. Again, just remember, you're divinely connected, you're always protected, and you're heading to victory. And this is simply a test that we're all going through at the same time. But there's so much love around you, and you're really, really doing a great job. So just keep doing the best you can, and have a lot of compassion and forgiveness in your heart for yourself and for others if they're not quite there yet. And with that, I'm sending you so much love. Mwah.